Welcome to a special episode of the Prosthetics and Orthotics podcast. Today we're reflecting on the past season and we discuss the latest advancements in our field. Joris then foreshadows some of the things to come in Formnext, the leading event for additive manufacturing and advanced technologies. Whether you're a professional or just starting out, stay tuned for a discussion on the current state and future of prosthetics and orthotics. Let's dive in.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joris Peels, and this is another episode of the Prosthetics and Orthotics podcast with Brent Wright. How you doing, Brent?
Hey, Joris. Doing well, man. It's been fun. You know, I did this stuff with Duan at the CD Fam. Yeah. And then I had done some stuff with Mayamo, so traveling. But now it's your turn to travel because you're heading to go to Formnext, and I'm a little jealous about that because I know that there's a lot of people going there, especially and from my understanding, there's going to be some a pretty good O&P presence there. I don't know who all is going there, but you know, HP always has a great booth. I'm sure Formnext Labs is going to doing that, and they're making a splash with some of their newest news coming out with the open materials and that sort of thing, and that the 4L looks pretty awesome too. So that's there's so many things that are going to be coming out, and I just feel like Formnext is a big place to release stuff, right?
Sure, yeah. It's the biggest show in additive. What I say is that the Formnext exhibitor party is bigger than the next biggest show in additive. Right? That's the so to give you a little bit of an idea of the scale of like the people that go to the exhibitor party is one of the biggest shows in additive. So it's in Frankfurt, which is horrible. But apart from that, it's the definitive show for our industry. So it's the only show where you get people from Asia, from North America, from Europe, coming from all over. So if you're there, and I would recommend if you're really deep into 3D printing, do go there. But the added advantage, some people go for 2 days or something, and then from the States, it isn't really worth it. But if you go for 5 days, right, then you'll be able to meet so many people and see so many things that it really is worth it because it saves you on going to 2 to 3 different shows.
Okay.
Right? You can meet CEOs from the big Chinese companies, the big U.S. companies, from big German service bureaus, everyone. So that's the real advantage. And because it is the biggest show, it is there's an overwhelming part of news releases there. And a lot of people like to meet resellers, meet people to do big deals there as well, kind of like ink big deals as well. So it's that kind of show. I forgot how many people go there, but it's definitely the definitive 3D printing show at the moment. And it's also so far bigger at the head than I don't think the other people are getting anywhere close, really. So what is big stuff? Well, the big stuff is, it's kind of already been announced. I think it's Formnext Labs, I think has the most impact for the market, O&P market. Formnext Labs used to be a closed ecosystem. You know, we do the software, we do the materials, everything works perfectly, or you can go home. That's it. You know, the hacking, do it in your spare time, you know? And that has given them a really excellent experience. On the software, it's fantastic. I really like them. I use them a lot at home. The annoying part is that polymerization. So always cleaning the parts, getting support off is annoying. But apart from that, the software and all that is works really, really well. But the problem is that if you want to manufacture, you're kind of stuck in some really high priced materials, and then you want to change something, and then they can't. So what they've done now is they've opened up the ecosystem to the extent that you can now, first of all, bulk buy materials at much lower cost. You can get your own open material settings and do your own material at much lower cost as well, or do materials that Formnext is never interested in or never wants to do. And this is also for their whole ecosystem, right? So they're opening up the powder bed fusion printers, the fuse, or the VAT polymerization system. And this would be great for O&P people making components, for the hearing aid industry, for lots and lots of people in dental as well. And this will cost them some money. And again, so some people will experiment and stuff, but I think a lot of people will just continue to go with that closed ecosystem. If you're working in an architectural office and you have a fuse or whatever you're printing buildings, you don't care about you don't want to experiment. You just want it to work. right? Other people may leave them or something, but they'll still buy more of the printers and stick to that ecosystem rather than going to cheaper Chinese printers that don't work as well. But hey, they have the materials half the price. And so far, the material pricing looks very attractive as well. It's kind of really close to the pricing you would see on industrial systems and stuff. They're still making money on it, but a lot less than they were. And it really, it's brilliant news. That I think is wonderful. The 4L you said as well. That seems like a big system that could be really relevant for OMP. Again, we were both a little bit nervous about the shatter potential of that polymerization parts. So they're finer. They're great for molds. If you need a silicon mold or something, you want an impression mold, or you want some kind of new silicon soft thing, it's a fantastic technology. But for end use parts, I mean, powder bed fusion and material extrusion are likely to fail safer, let's say, or fail in a less catastrophic, less kind of, you hit your head on the table kind of way. So still, I'd be hesitant using it, but I think for molding, I think it'd be really exciting to use now, looking at like molded components and kind of cushions and all that other stuff. So that's going to be really relevant. What's also relevant, like I can't tell you a bunch of stuff because we're doing before all the embargoes and stuff. So I can't tell you a lot of stuff's coming out. But what's also relevant is we're seeing new powder bed fusion materials, stronger powder bed fusion materials, more filled materials, which are good for the whole market. And we're seeing also some kind of more innovation in the PP space, which you guys use a lot, and TPU. So reinforced polypropylene, different TPE, TPA, TPU variants, which may be lighter weight or maybe even work better for that. And we're seeing more kind of like semi-industrial material extrusion systems, kind of like what Filament Innovations is doing, kind of people that are doing that. So far the news seems interesting. It's actually like, we know that the economy is kind of complicated. Let's put it that way. Hesitation is the new normal, let's say. So capex is down. The U.S. presidency was resolved, and then there was a stock market run. But companies still don't really know what to do with this result. And the talk about tariffs has got a lot of people really scared at the moment, as well as spending. I've got a lot of people looking at maybe spending to circumvent tariffs to a certain extent, or buying printers. I know people that are buying kind of Chinese type machines now because they anticipate that the tariffs on those machines will be higher. So they're running to buy these things while they still can and do so affordably. Now, the fact that, money hates uncertainty, right? So we don't know. So that's a bit of more of an impact. But given that, we're seeing a lot of releases. We're seeing a lot of inertia in the industry, and we're seeing a lot more application thinking. So you're right about like the HP was the example of these people that had applications on their booth. We're seeing a ton more of that from Arberg. We're seeing a ton more of that from people. And OMP wise, whereas, if there would be like a kind of an OMP-ish thing on the booth, it would be those kind of like those the lattice casts.
Right.
Everybody loves the lattice casts. That's something that people want to will into existence, no matter how much it doesn't make any sense. But that was like at one point that was super popular. But now we're seeing real parts, right? We're seeing actual parts that people use. HP was really, really great in doing this. Ultimaker traditionally has been really great at doing this as well. And now we're seeing a lot of other companies, Arberg and a lot of other of the powder bed fusion companies, come up with like parts that actually make sense. Right, that actually show this is Bob made this, and this is an actual part that's going in on with a person. Instead of a couple of years ago, Formnext, everybody had like these fake kind of parts, and they weren't like actually, they weren't actually used. And so I'm looking forward to that. I think if one of the people here going, I should go next year because the hotel rooms are super expensive, so you have to plan ahead, so that's kind of expensive if you would do that on your own dime, let's say. And you kind of have to plan your visit because there is an awful lot to see and an awful lot of people to speak to. But one of the things I do always is to look at all these booths. Stratasys, by the way, also had really good application things. And I always go to the Stratasys booth, even if they have no news whatsoever, and look at all their applications and all the things they show, because there's always something that showcase. Like one thing, the reason I do this is one part, and that was like 10 years ago or something. I don't know, something like that, 8 years or whatever, something like that. I was at Formnext, and the Stratasys showcased the part that was essentially using the support material. So they printed the support material, then they made a carbon fiber hand layup thing up over it, and then they washed away the support. And that alone was worth like all the time I spent looking at all these parts and all shows since then, right? Because that is something that is like, on the one hand, super obvious. And it turns out that people in the drone business and aerospace have been doing this for a really long time. But
Right.
I had never seen this. And it turns out that for a lot of like kind of hidden cavity kind of really complicated carbon fiber type of stuff, yeah, this is a great tool. It's not for everyone because support material for 3D printing is quite expensive. But this kind of material, this kind of thing is a really great idea for a lot of people making super complicated hidden mold type of thing. So that alone for me like really got me worrying, and I was able to help like 2 customers with this, and then we started doing it with other print technologies as well, and maybe for OMP that's a great inspiration. So why should you go? I think for OMP people, I think the US shows are more relevant. I think, and we have a ton of 3D print stuff there. If you are like a Filament Innovations or you're a Mitsubishi or you are a service bureau, then you need to be here. You need to be at Formnext. There's no choice because everything is there, and that's where everything kind of coalesces around what the future is going to be. And the sentiment of the market, what's available. Like, for example, 3 years ago, all of a sudden, there were like, I kid you not, 30 really large Filament Innovations like FDM machines. Right. And now there are 2 of them left over that are really doing kind of well, and everybody else is like kind of dead. So it's that kind of trend that you see really magnified. And you can see like these really big machines, like these CMS machines, which is like, it literally is like, it's a couple of yards by a couple of yards, I mean, these giant things.
Yeah.
Right. And you see construction. There was like a construction pavilion, all this construction. That's something you maybe don't think about. But that could be really inspiring. So in the kind of like seeing random things, that's the real value of Formnext, where you see something. Like, for example, I didn't know. Well, I knew that 2PP is like this technology, whatever, that existed. But then I found out that there was this electro-optical kind of way to do electro-optical interconnects with this. And I would have never found out if I wouldn't just randomly talk to this guy. So the randomness is really the reason to go. And over the OMP, yeah, I think if you're a 3D printing person, expert, whatever, then totally need to be here, because this is like the where it all starts.
Yeah. So question for you on some of that stuff. So I know you talked about some of the large format FDM, and it does seem like, especially with the advent, I mean, Bambu has been around for a while, but there's been I mean, I didn't read the article all the way, but it looks like Nike might have a shoe that's maybe FDM or that partnership. So it's like FDM is being brought back into the spotlight, which I think is very interesting.
Yep.
What is your thought on some of the robot stuff? So like the arm, so large format, but then I think that do you ever see a time where like the Cartesian or the Delta printers are just replaced by an arm with an effector on the end, or is that just way too expensive?
It depends. I mean, these cobots. So there's a movement which is this is going to be relevant for OMP a little bit faster. There's cobots, which are relatively safe robots that stop automatically if you hit them and stuff. They're meant to be used in kind of like packing boxes next to the worker and all this. So a robot arm is a super dangerous thing. It doesn't know where you are and whatever, and if it just sweeps and you're there, you're dead. Huh? So these cobot-driven systems, cobot prices are coming down. Cobot-driven systems are becoming available now, and that is for these socket type of things, brace type things. That's going to be quite interesting because you can make it on a dummy, for example, or you could make it on a surface. The big example is if you need something that's conformal to the body, right? The 6-axis type of approach is much more interesting, actually, than an FDM Cartesian box approach. Right? So if we need a brace, a scoliosis brace, my favorite example of this, we could print this perhaps freeform in air, which would save a ton of time compared to any other solution. Right? But we'd have to go really slow, and we'd have to write material mix and all this. But anyway, we could make it much more conformal to somebody with their breasts or their contours of their arm or the contours of the side of their thing. It's just much, much easier to do this much faster. So for definitely the scoliosis braces is the one where I'm like thinking that's the one I think where the robot arm approach would really win out in the day. Doing that same part on an FDM printer will probably require a lot of support material, which you'll have to then remove in a separate step, and will require an awful long time compared to other things where, and you're not laying down. So that's on the sockets, you have to lay down a lot of material to support the person, so it's okay, right? And you can probably do it without support, so then you're saving that time. And it needs to be strong and tough. With the scoliosis brace, if you're doing like a PA11 and stuff like this, or a PA11CF or something like this, which I don't know if it's good on the skin, but let's just say something like that, a carbon fiber polyamide. And well, it could be really strong enough to make this in a relatively little material. So there's no reason to print this giant thing. But if we're going to be putting our weight down on this thing every single day, all day, we might get a very different calculation. So I would expect that in the lower extremity stuff, the underload stuff, for a material extrusion to be a big, big part of that. And then regular material extrusion. Now, if we're looking at the robot arm stuff, these robot arms are quite pricey, right? We're talking 10K, 50K, 100K. You can get a secondhand one quite attractively, actually. So we expect, and we are seeing a lot of people innovating in, okay, we bought this hand and we put an extruder on it, we're doing it. But we're not seeing a lot of these people come up with products that are relevant, safety relevant, for really people-based things. If people turn to the large medium format, they're doing aerospace tools, right? Really large thing for carbon fiber, for windows for aircraft is a big example. Or they're doing stuff like a tub of, I love this, like horses and carriages for horses, that kind of stuff, or fire engine components, or stuff like this. And that's quite profitable in and of itself. And then you're really using the fact that, why should you always get the bigger pizza? Because like the diameter makes the thing much bigger than you even think, right? And that's when that really starts to add up cost-wise. And if you're looking at a specialty vehicle market, there's a lot of manual labor there, a lot of dudes riveting stuff. So if I'm going to be like making that component with the printing, I actually save a lot of money and weight and time and all this. So there we really see these guys find a ton of applications. So are they going to be focused on O&P? Not really. If you came to me and said, hey, I want to make a scoliosis brace company, I'd be like, okay, let's see if we can make it with a robot arm, right? Same thing with all these organs that people are talking about printing. Why would you do that on a Cartesian system? We need to figure out how to do it on a robot arm next to the patient or in the patient. That would be the most obvious thing, What are we going to do? Put it in a car and like drive it across town? Like, I'm not seeing this. And then on the what I do think is really relevant generally in material extrusion is this idea of Bambu Labs. I do not hold stock in Bambu Labs. They don't pay me. I actually bought my Bambu Labs printer, paid my own money for it, the first one. And I think it's going to change everything. I think it's really, really very important. And I talked to their European guy, like Cedric, and he told me they were an experience and software company. That's very similar to Formnext, right? But whereas Formnext is all about that workflow, right? They're all about their workflows, to file to part. Bambu Lab, by the way, everybody says it wrong, but Bambu Lab, I do too. Bambu Lab is much more about the experience overall. So they have their own little thingiverse in the app. They have their own little slicer, which is probably built on other people's stuff, but maybe we'll change that soon. A lot of people hated it for that. But and they made their own slicer, kind of. But anyway, but now they're updating it. But now, for example, they have a selfie tool. This might seem stupid, right? But they have this tool where you could take a picture and upload it to their cloud solution. All their stuff is cloud, except if you buy this printer, which you can run offline. And then it'll turn it into like a little statuette. Now, that's like a silly tool, but it might be cute, right? Somebody's going to make money off of this. Might just setting up a booth somewhere and selling these things, But, it might not seem relevant. But imagine if they get more into like scanning and stuff. And these guys start to make a scan your foot type of thing or a scan your body type of thing. That's a real. They're really going to be a really relevant player, and they're really wiping the floor with like almost everyone in their segment and much above it. They're causing havoc for Stratasys, for companies like Ultimaker, for companies anything in between. Right? Well, anything up until large format or regulated industries where they're not comfortable with it being a Chinese company. Everything else they're wiping the floor with them.
Yeah. Well, and I think that what you said is interesting, and I mean this is quite a few episodes back, but one of the things, like you mentioned, yes, you've got this like statuette thing, potentially, but what does that actually mean? So they're actually taking a photo, creating some sort of digital something, and creating this 3D thing. Yeah. Okay, so a logical next step would be, hey, is there something that we could do for watch bands or foot orthoses? There's already a lot of people using the Bambu Lab stuff for foot orthoses and throwing on their own top cover and such. But what if they were to do that? And you've always said that it's these bigger companies that have, yes, they have more capital resources, but they also have very creative engineers, software programmers, and this stuff is just math to them. And so when you say, hey, I want to use my Bambu Lab printer to make foot orthoses, some guy is going to be like, hey, that's cool. I did the selfie thing. I've just got to change around some, ones and zeros, and boom, you've got foot orthoses, which would take, any of these other large, even O&P companies like an Autobach or Hanger or whatever, it would take them a lot of their resources and talent to do that. And a company like Bambu Lab has it right there local, and it makes a big difference right away. And they've done it for very minimal cost, effort, and that sort of thing. And so that's where this stuff gets pretty exciting to me is there is a sense, and I've talked to many of like the application engineers and such that I work with that love the O&P side of things. And so they like, hey, it's pretty cool that my stuff, went on a jet or on a car, but man, how cool is it that I got this, little kid up and walking? And that means a lot to them. And so if you can bridge the gap between the two, is like, hey, yes, you can do the car widget, but guess what? That same program or effort that you're doing can also help people walk. I think there is a lot of disruption, and I hate that word, but I think that is true in this case, that can happen, that is out of the control of the traditional orthotic and prosthetic side of things. Now, with all that being said, you and I have gone back and forth on the out of control thing. I think both of us can say, especially like when it comes to the prosthetics or any of the custom stuff, it's very important to have somebody that this is what they do, to be involved, but it doesn't take that same person to actually create a solution. So we can be users of the solution, and it can make a difference for our patient, but those engineers want to involve people to make sure the stuff is safe when it goes on.
Yeah, totally. But that's also why maybe that won't happen, because Bambu Labs will be like, we can make 1 million statuettes and we'll never get sued. And if we make this orthotics thing, then, so it may not happen. But it's interesting to see this as a trend. But I do think they're going to have a huge impact on this industry, just in people making it. Like, so now the 1PE or something like this, that's the people complain because everything went up to the cloud and they wanted external firmware, and they thought the printers would phone home. There's indications this is true, by the way. So they have the cloud-based one. So now, on the one hand, they kind of gave up that control, which they really wanted, to be able to slice all these models, to be able to know what's going on, to be able to improve their print results. But this also means that we could now make a software solution for the Bambu Lab e-printer and sell it and bundle it. All right? And that, I think, is going to be very interesting as well. And also it means that if you now want your own print farm, that you can get these things, run your own software on them or run extra software to really kind of help you out. So I think that's going to be a very, very interesting kind of development if we're going forward. And you also mentioned the Nike sneaker, right? So that's okay. So this is like an obsession of mine. There's a guy called Zellerfeld, or it's a company called Zellerfeld, right?
Yep.
And essentially they use like the foaming TPU from Color Fab, and they print shoes. And there was like 20 people doing something similar to that. Some had pellets, some had filament, and whatever. And the interesting thing is that technically, on their merits, everybody was kind of similar and being very cagey. And cagey to the point where they didn't have a technology, but okay. But Zellerfeld managed to create this mystique around them that made the brands believe that they were able to fulfill the 3D printing dream, where we were like, they're not doing much different stuff than what I'm doing at home. Right? And they didn't solve the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem of having a TPU foot, which is everyone in orthotics has tried to make that kind of a fully enclosed 3D printed shoe. You end up kind of, I don't know, I call it like, it's like kind of getting a Ziploc bag of hamburger and then like putting it around your foot and just like walking around. Like after 10 minutes, it's just gonna be like this, Right. It's horrible, dude. It's horrible. So, and that's what a couple of years ago I concluded, like the TPU 3D printed shoe is not going to work, right? And now he's making it work because he has his mystique. He's got the brand. He apparently is good in a small room on a conference call. You know what I mean? And he got Louis Vuitton to make a shoe with him. He got Range, the brand, like a whole bunch of brands. And now Nike is making an Air Max with him. Now, we don't know if it's going to come on the market. We do know that Nike is kind of a little bit in trouble. They don't know how to play defense, so they're a bit panicky because they've always been the challenger or the cool one, and now they're like the genius company that all of a sudden is kind of missing. They're kind of they're not doing well, and they just don't. Well, we've been ahead of the pack. Imagine like resilience is a really important skill, and they just haven't played much defense. These guys. So they're panicking. So it may just be some marketing thing. They do a lot of stuff for marketing's sake. Maybe they just make the show for this presentation and it never comes out, right? Maybe it only comes out with collectors because of a huge $10,000 thing at one point. That could also happen. Or it could go into some kind of level of production. Now, I personally believe in slides very, very much. Brent helped me try to make some slides. We're so busy with that. We have a design tool for slides. I like slides because slides are open. And they're actually quite comfortable to wear. And you actually have a lot less of that slip and slide kind of stuff you have if you can close a shoe. So I believe in slides. So I would be more excited if they were making a Nike slipper, whatever. But the fact that Nike now, after essentially every other shoe company in the world, every other big shoe company is doing this, means that it's now going to be something that everyone's going to do. And that's going to have huge impacts on the soles and the insoles and all that stuff. And one thing they did showcase, which is kind of funny, like the only thing that Nike actually physically makes, except for hot air, and designs, is that little air cushion, right? They have like literally a production site, I think it's Portland, I would guess, and they make the little air cushions. Everything else goes to Vietnam and China, whatever, they make it there. And outsourced companies make it. They don't have their own factories, except for one factory which makes little air cushions. So what do? They stopped the print at one point, pulped in this little air cushion, and then printed over it. And I think this as a design thing is going to get a lot of people thinking, wait a minute, can I put a sensor in there, which Echo tried before as well? Can I stop the print to put another component in there, maybe a textile component or something, So that I think is really interesting that they did this, because it's kind of stupid because, of course, the idea of 3D print is that you don't need these little air cushions anymore, and you can do an air cushion for you and for me, and my left foot and my right foot could be different. But so it's kind of funny of them to do it, but at the same time, I think it'll get a lot of people thinking.
Yeah.
So, and this could be huge for us. I mean, I think it could be huge, and also it's really interesting that I found it. I made a list of like 20 people that are doing shoe things, right? People that had like literally some kind of 3D print shoe. The Zellerfeld guy was on it, but you couldn't really tell. There was not anything that in design or whatever. The designs were nice, right? That was interesting. They were the shoes you most wanted to wear. That was one thing, right? And the ones that were 100% 3D printed. Those are the only two things that he had. But there were some other people that had the good design, but then they weren't 3D printed. But what they managed to do is cultivate this mystique, right? And maybe that's enough. Maybe that'll be huge for us.
Yeah. Well, and I think that there's a lot of interesting stuff that's going to be coming out. The speed of 3D printing. Like when I was in Guatemala and did the partial foot for the little pediatric patient, or both of them, I was printing really fast with TPU. And, it's not we're not talking about 15 millimeters a second. Like, what the old days, like I'm pushing hard, like really hard. I'm trying to think of the actual, but
50,
like
100?
Yeah, I would say between 50 and 100 that I was pushing and getting the results that I still wanted. You could go more, but you could definitely tell you were.
But that's in basement, isn't that? Isn't that Brent?
No,
no,
man. Oh my goodness, I cannot believe you brought base mode up.
So how are you doing that then?
It was on just the Bambu. The thing is that you do have to tweak that profile. So Bambu throttles everything through their volumetric management stuff. And I use a bigger nozzle. So I was using a 0.8 millimeter nozzle. Yeah. And so with that,
size design or something, or what?
No, I mean it was the Bambu 0.8 millimeter nozzle. Okay. Yeah. And so with that, you don't have as much pressure, like the rebound pressure, and so you're really able to push more filament through. So you're not only able to heat more, but you're able to go faster at the same time. But you lose a little bit of resolution, but it's not crazy. So if you haven't used a larger nozzle on your Bambus, I definitely suggest it.
I've not, dude. I've just been trying to get TPU out of the thing and a bit kind of like printing repeatability stuff. Yeah, which is okay, but it's better. It's worse for TPU than for almost any other material. So it's a bit annoying for me.
Yeah, well, and that's where I'd say I always tell people if they're like really serious about printing TPU is to go to a larger nozzle, and you'll find that your problems will go away.
Yeah.
Yep.
I did mention that before, but I was thinking like literally dies design kind of stuff, like high flow, kind of boom boom stuff. I didn't think like it was like literally 0.8.
Yeah, it's just their 0.8 millimeter nozzle, and don't be like me and try to figure out how to change the nozzle without reading the directions. I think I had the whole Bambu printer apart, and all you have to do is unsnap a cover and flick this bracket out. And I had screws everywhere and all that stuff.
That is one thing. Like, don't think IKEA, right? Don't think IKEA where like, oh, I'll do that myself. No. This has not been designed like that, right? This has been designed exactly like the IKEA stuff. You do what they tell you to, exactly how you tell you to. So that's one thing we've noticed as well. My girlfriend had a thing where we were printing, and it snapped. The filament snapped in the what is that? Yeah, around the nozzle, beneath the brake, let's say, and then it oozed out, so we couldn't pull it out anymore. She had to take apart half the printer, right? And again, she there was no. I could kind of see how she could do this, but also at the same time, it wasn't intuitive at all. Right? It was very much kind of slow, and you had to move this and this. So that's one thing. Like, there's a lot of videos out there and stuff, and they do put a lot of videos out. I like the QR code system. Yeah, where they give you a QR code, you do the QR code on your phone, and then you see the video. I love that, but it's not like, don't think of this as a fixable device in the sense of like you should just like, oh, this is why it does this. No. You should do step by step whatever they tell you to, and some of that stuff is not. That's one thing. Is the weakness of the machine is everything has to go to the cloud for a lot of the stuff you need to do, except if you buy this other machine. That's one weakness. The other thing is support is weak depending where you are. That's another thing. So you do have to kind of be like the kind of person that will Google support like Bambu Labs nozzle block, right? And everything you have to do is just do exactly right. Just do exactly like they tell you to, because there's no. I'm used to kind of like a rep Huxley kind of dude. You know what I mean? Where it's like, I'll just like do it myself. Or I used to be like that, right? And so it's very different. That is a very different approach than this, where you're trying to like, you don't repair your TV, right? Or you wouldn't just open your TV and just be like, I'll figure it out. Right. At least I wouldn't. But this is kind of the thing. This is like so it's a different kind of thing. But it works really well. I have really high yield, really high uptime with it. But if it does break, it's gonna be kind of more complicated to repair than other systems, I think, and take you more time. Yeah. So if you were doing this in production, I would really get I would never get one for manufacturing or relying on it. Even a small business, if you want to print some stuff, I would get like two. Yeah, that lift isn't super heavy. So I do want to just kind of we got a few minutes left here, but we'll take a little bit of a right turn. I'm super excited about all the new stuff. But I do want to take a time just to reflect back on the last few seasons, or even the last season. And I know you love the season thing, right? But some of the things that we've learned along the way, and I know, I mean, you're definitely invested. We've been doing this now. Yeah. I mean, we're past the 2-year mark, and so we're almost on to 3, and I think it's May of 2025 will be 3 years. But give me like a couple just lessons, I would say, of over the last season or two that you've learned, or some impressions that you've had about the orthotic and prosthetic industry. Ooh, I don't know. Oh my goodness! Like what number episode are we on now?
So we finished up 108, so this will be 109.
Okay. So 109 episodes looking back. Wow, that's crazy, actually. So I think first off, the industry is like, I don't want to repeat all the stuff we said. We have done this before, and I don't want to repeat stuff we said before. But one thing I think is it's a very fragmented industry where digitization is really making dollars and cents for people. Right? It really makes sense here. And that's, for us in 3D printing, that's interesting, because a lot of places it just doesn't. You do this all exercise, and the guy's like, yeah, it's too expensive, go away. But we're seeing in sockets, in small components, in invention of new devices, in commercializing new devices, it really does make sense. And we're seeing people from like one stop, like Sarah wants to invent something, to the largest companies in the industry, everyone's playing with it. Yeah. So this is an industry where industry-wide people are negotiating or engaging with this technology, not because they think it's cool, not because it's like the future or whatever, but because now it makes financial sense. So that's good, because we didn't know that when we started out, right?
Right.
Then when we started out, we were like, kind of, maybe this is going to be like dental. That was our theory, right? Maybe like dental, all the shops in the world, all the dental labs will deploy this technology. And now it's looking like that is happening, right? We're seeing more software. We saw a lot more software in the beginning being bandied about than the ones that are now successful and being continued, right? So there's been kind of a slowdown on the software front. We're seeing more engagement by the really large players, more public engagement. We knew secretly they were doing stuff before, obviously. More public engagement by the big players, and we're seeing a lot of engagement by individuals, or individual OMP clinics or small networks doing this. So I think it's a fundamental engagement that's really coming. Like, it's very material extrusion driven, which we always expected, I think. What I didn't expect is I expected that more, like, Equal has a really cool machine that they use to make orthoses. I expected a lot more of that. I expected a lot more people making like an orthoses software solution, everything. Like, one-on-one, you rent or buy this thing. I'll get you the software, the scanner, the printer, the material. Here you go. There's a Dutch company that does this, I think. I don't forget the name. But there's very few of that happening, really, whereas in dental, we see that a lot. So these kind of integrated bundle things, we don't see that much. Also, I did not expect MJF to become this prominent this quickly. I always expected that there would kind of be half FDA. I expected, no, if you would have asked me a couple of years ago when we started this, I would have said, yeah, maybe a third MJF, a third like kind of regular SLS kind of stuff, and a third like Chinese SLS or powder fusion. That's what I would have guessed, because I would have guessed the Chinese to be more aggressive on rolling out the technology, more aggressive on pricing, and better at executing, frankly. And I would not have, and I expected also EOS to be more gung ho and more out there, and better at printing TPU, frankly. So I think the rise of MJF and how quickly that's gone is absolutely stupendous for me. I would not have expected that, and also I would have expected much more. More people doing what you're doing, like actually being like a specialized service bureau for the business. You guys are doing this, and is there anyone else? I don't know. I don't think so. You know what I mean? That's kind of weird. We saw that a lot in other people, where there was a bunch of people in dental trying to do this. There's a bunch of people in dental appliances trying to do this. There's a bunch of people in bicycles trying to do it. You know what I mean? And so, whereas a lot of people want to make the inventions or products, there's not a lot of people want to serve the community that much. So that's kind of interesting. I didn't know that. I wouldn't expect that. I would expect a lot of people to do this. And one thing that's really positively surprised me is the amount of people inventing new stuff with this technology and taking it to market. We've had a bunch on the show already. There must be a lot more out there, and there are going to be a ton more. And I think as that becomes like a norm, we're going to see lots more cool products emerge where somebody doesn't have to, give up their day job, right? Somebody doesn't have to, bet their house and their business on this. They could just make a kind of side gig kind of product, right? In addition to their practice, could launch this, put it on the market. Hey, whatever, they sell 2 a month. Okay, whatever, it's fine, right? So that is something that is really very encouraging, because that'll increase the pace of innovation in this market. And the other thing, which we talked about a ton, which is this general movement of the whole idea of the anathema thing, where we get a nice person who doesn't make anything. They just have an office in a mall or something. I don't know if that exists anymore, but they have an office somewhere in a high traffic area. They do the scanning, and the file management stuff, the CAD, goes to India, and the manufacturer goes to Mexico. We are seeing that, but we're both so into that as a oh wow, that could be great for the industry. It could let a lot of people focus on customer care and outsource everything. But it could also be an anathema if somebody just Hanger just uses that to roll over everybody, because the Chinese or the Indian guy will be better at just doing that CAD stuff day in, day out, and it'll be cheaper. And the dudes in Costa Rica or Mexico or whatever are just going to make that cheaper than you could ever do. And we just thought that the digitization, kind of like that digitization anathema thing, hasn't really happened. And we haven't even seen that many signs of it. And then the other thing, which I think is really strange, is this whole Equal, and also the other thing,
Embla.
Yeah, Embla. I still think it sucks. They're great. They're a great company, but the name is horrible. Anyway, they the whole idea of them going into the clinics market, it's just a bit weird to me.
Yeah,
I guess
Autobach has done it. Yeah.
Also, like the Autobach started with the clinics, so maybe they're like, well, I don't know, we always did this, but I think just generally, I don't know. That to me is really strange because you don't really expect that in a lot of these other industries. You know, you don't expect them to be that vertically integrated. You don't expect them to then also want to do retail. But Luxottica did this actually. If I'm thinking about it right now, Luxottica is this giant company that makes most of the sunglasses, you know, and a lot of the regular glasses. And it says Ray-Ban on it, but it's that. And they do it for brands as well, like some fashion brand or something will launch sunglasses, and they'll actually make it for them. And they have a very similar approach. They do retail. They do Sunglass Hut, belongs to them. They do glasses to a certain extent. They do frames. They do the manufacturing every step of the way. So, you know, there are other industries where this the soup to nuts kind of thing is happening. But still, it feels a bit strange that you're like, oh, we're going to be compete to you and sell stuff to you and also make components. You know, it just feels a little uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
But that would, yeah. So, and those are things I'm kind of noticing at the moment. And and also like, I think if you would ask me like at the beginning, I would have expected that robotic arm stuff to get cheaper much, much faster, kind of.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great insight. And I like 100% agree with you on that, you know, and I know you've been kind of hammering the thing, don't buy a machine, use the capacity, use your creativity to design. And I'll tell you that one of the things, and I just actually had the discussion with somebody today, they were doing this very complex arm thing. And the guy was like, you know, could I design it? Maybe. Would it look as good as what you've done? Probably not. Would it have taken me 3 days to design and it still not be right? He's like, why would I not? Like, I know what I want. Why don't I go see another patient, let you do the design, get the print, and go fit the device? He's like, I'm going to save myself time. Yes, it's going to cost me a little bit of money, but what does that really cost me? In the end, it's probably going to be cheaper with a device that works. And so I think that's what's exciting. And I wasn't expecting to be here, you know, 108 episodes in and be like, you know what? I think FDM, I think there is a real answer there for some things. And then 2 is doubling down on how do you free up your time? So that can be one of 2 ways. You outsource, right, to somebody that can do it better, cheaper than you, or you automate. And so doing a little bit of both, I think, is important. But I think gone are the days of the idea of like, as a clinician, I want to sit down and design all my stuff. Do the fitting stuff, all the clinical relevant stuff, and outsource the rest, and free up some of your time. And I think that's to me, if I could have told myself that, you know, 10 years ago, things, you know, all the lessons learned has got me to where I'm at now. But if I was starting today, that's what I would try to tell myself. So, yeah, those are the things.
I think it's a great point. I mean, specialize, do what you're good at. Maybe the manufacturing is the part you're good at, or the design. You know what I mean? Maybe like people should get together, and I'm great at the customer service stuff, and patients love me. You know, they think I'm the best thing ever. But I'm not a good fabricator. I'm not a good materials person. I just don't do that. Maybe it's more about specialized. Maybe you have 3 clinics. I would love to see this. I don't know if this is ever going to happen. Let's say you're the good manufacturer guy. I'm great with patients. And then Sarah's a great engineer on the design front. Imagine like we just did all of our patients work together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In that kind of a collaboration kind of way. I think that to me is very exciting. And the other thing we didn't see, and I remember we talked about this in the beginning a couple of times, is this whole idea. If Bill Gates would have an industrial accident, I'm not sure how he would get an industrial accident. If he would get his legs trapped between his yacht or he's boarding it or something, right? He would have the same prosthetic that you would have, right? And I guess he could get the best myoelectric whatever thing with like a brain controlled whatever. But that's it. Right. Meanwhile, if he wants to buy sweaters, I was just in Milan. And then you're like, don't show up in Milan. This is great. And then you're looking at the sweater. You're like, this is a nice sweater. And you like look at the price. It's like $1,400. for a sweater. And I'm like, okay, did they get the models to make the sweater? How is this $1,400? This is a sweater. Like, imagine having a $1,400 sweater, dude. You've been drinking coffee, but scared for your life. But I guess that's not the point. The point is that these people for whom a $1,400 sweater makes no impact on them, either emotionally or financially. You know?
Yeah.
And for those people, there's still no Rolls Royce of this.
Right.
You know what I mean? There are expensive solution arms. There are expensive things, but there's no Rolls Royce arm of this or something, you know?
Yeah. That's true. Cool.
All right. So I hope you love this kind of freewheeling, free spilling kind of episode of the Prosthetics and Orthotics podcast with Brent Wright.
Yeah, this was great. Actually, a lot of insight, and I always like reflecting, but then looking forward. So this was great.
Awesome. And thank you again for listening to the Prosthetics and Orthotics podcast. Have a great day.